Gi Hun should have died many times. Let's face it, he barely survived the Squid game, and in this video we'll analyze every moment he was literally one step away from death. Let's start with his first dangerous moment in the opening episode. The first time Gi Hun almost died was a few minutes into the Squid game, and let's be honest, he should have been the first one to be eliminated by the soldiers. At the beginning, no one realizes how monstrous the games are. The first game of red light, green light seemed easy, but then the first player moves after the red light command and immediately falls over dead. And then chaos begins. People run for the exit, and the shooting does not stop, and the players fall one after another. Gi Hun falls into a stupor, but then makes his first mistake. He stumbles. You would think that at this moment he is finished, the doll is about to turn around, and the snipers have already taken aim. And at the moment when it seems that everything is over, Ali, aka player 199, reaches out and grabs him out of the air. If Ali hadn't saved him, Gi Hun's story in the Squid game would have ended right there. But that was only the first time Gi Hun was going to die. If you thought that was a brutal episode, wait until you see what happens in the next round. At this point, Gi Hun already understands that the Squid game is deadly. But he doesn't yet realize that games don't end when the lights go out in the players' room. The second case, after a brutal round, the soldiers give the players a meager excuse for dinner. An egg and water. Not enough to survive, but enough to spark a conflict. And that night, Jong-duk-soo and his gang decide to get rid of the competition themselves. The lights go out, chaos ensues. The players fight, they eliminate each other mercilessly. Gi Hun is completely unprepared. Out of nowhere, player 413 swings a metal pipe straight at his head. This should have been the end, but Ali and Song-woo react in time, intercepting the attacker as he strikes. However, before Gi Hun can even blink, player 113 lunges at him with a knife. Luckily, Song-woo knocks him down at that moment. At that moment, the dorm goes into complete chaos. Gi Hun and his allies are barely holding on, and then, suddenly, everything stops. Not because the soldiers intervened, not because Deok-soo showed mercy, but because the number one player begs for it to stop. Standing on his bunk and shaking, Il-nam earnestly begs for mercy, and suddenly the main organizer stops all the rioting. At that moment, Gi Hun was very happy to be alive at all. But looking back, that was the first time we got a hint that Il-nam was none other than the creator of the death games. It only gets worse. At this point, Gi Hun has already escaped death twice. Once in the game of red light, green light, and once during the dorm massacre. But in the next round, survival will depend on more than just luck. It will require strength because in this round, the players are competing in a tug of war. And Gi Hun's team is weak. They don't stand a chance. They are up against a group of strong men. And on their own team, 2 women, an old man, and a few unknown players. The third case, from the moment they step onto the platform, it looks like they're going to fail. The game begins, and the opponents pull with all their might. Gi Hun's team surges forward, sliding toward the edge. Their feet slip. Their palms burn from the friction. With seconds left before they fall into the abyss, Song-woo does something out of the ordinary. He says, "When I give the signal, take 3 steps forward." But what they tell him is that it's just a crazy idea. But with no other options, they do as he says, and it works. The opponents lose their balance, falling forward. This is their only chance. Gi Hun's team pulls with all their might, and now their opponents are falling. They shouldn't have won, they should have died right here. But Il-nam's strategy and Sang-woo's risky move did the trick. Gi Hun barely has time to celebrate because the next game is even more dangerous. Gi Hun has survived brutal trials and life or death struggles, but this time there is no physical challenge, just a bag of marbles. The players are paired up thinking they will work as a team, but then the soldiers announce a surprising rule that the players will play any game they choose with their partner. They play against each other. Whoever takes all 10 marbles from the other wins, and only one survives. Gi Hun plays against Il-nam, a decrepit old man who has helped him many times. The fourth case. At first, Gi Hun feels relieved. Of course he will beat him, but then he starts losing. Despite his age, Il-nam guesses correctly time after time. The number of balls that Gi Hun has is rapidly decreasing. One more defeat and he is dead. He has no choice but to cheat. Il-nam's mind is not so clear anymore. He forgets not only the count, the order of moves, but even where he is. And Gi Hun takes advantage of this. He deceives him, convincing him to give him the balls. But at the last moment, Il-nam stops and says, "We're Kombu, right? Kombu always shares everything they have, no matter what." He knows he knew about the deception all along, and yet he lets Gi Hun win. The protagonist should have lost, but Il-nam's mercy saves him once again. And if that moment was super tense, wait until you see how Gi Hun almost dies in the finale. The game started with 456 players. Now there are 2 left, and the final test is a brutal battle with no rules. The soldiers draw a squid-shaped outline on the ground. The final game has begun. Gi Hun against Sang-woo, his childhood friend who has become his true enemy here. Gi Hun fights desperately, but Sang-woo fights to the death. At the very beginning, he stabs Gi Hun in the leg. Blood soaks the ground, he can barely stand. Then Sang-woo rushes forward, raising his knife for the final blow. This should have been the end, but Gi Hun intercepts the knife in midair, clutching the blade with his bare hands. Adrenaline rushes through him. Gi Hun fights back, knocking Sang-woo to the ground before grabbing a knife and looming over him. This is his chance. He can win right now, but he can't finish his friend. Instead, Gi Hun drops the knife and walks to the finish line, ready to take advantage of the rule that allows them both to walk away. But Sang-woo stops him, sacrificing himself in the process. He collapses into Gi Hun's arms, barely breathing, as the rain washes away his blood. And so, the game was over. Gi Hun barely won, not by killing, but by maintaining his humanity. But even after Gi Hun had gone through all 6 games, his most terrifying encounter with death was yet to come. And this time, it had nothing to do with the Squid Game. Gi Hun thought the nightmare was over. He had won. He had managed to survive. But even outside the arena, death continued to gnaw at his heels. Refusing to spend the money he won, he obsessively tries to destroy the game. His search leads him to a familiar face, the recruiter who lured him into a deadly challenge, but this time, Gi Hun isn't playing Doc G, he's playing Russian roulette. The kind where you load one bullet, spin the cylinder, and pull the trigger. In the dimly lit room, a revolver lies between them. The rules are simple. Take turns pulling the trigger, knowing that one bullet is loaded. Gi Hun's hands shake as he raises the gun. If there's a round in the chamber, it's over. Click. Empty. He's still safe. The recruiter grins as he turns the gun towards himself. Another shot. Click. Still empty. Round after round, the tension builds. With each shot, the chances of survival diminish. Gi Hun's face turns pale, his heart pounds. If his luck deserts him, he won't survive. And then the recruiter freezes, the gun in his hand. He feels the weight of the last shot. And instead of pointing it at Gi Hun, he brings it to himself. Without a sound, he pulls the trigger and falls dead, and Gi Hun freezes. He should be the one lying on the floor, but he managed to survive again. This time it is not a victory, it is only a warning. Gi Hun has just entered the war, and next time his luck may not save him. Gi Hun returns to the Squid Game, and this time the only way to survive is through cooperation. The next challenge is the pentathlon. 5 players are tied together and must complete 5 different children's games. If one player fails, the entire team is eliminated. Gi Hun's team starts off well. They quickly clear the first 3 challenges, staying ahead of the timer but are then stopped by the 4th game, which involves spinning a top. It sounds easy, but their chosen player is struggling. Gi Hun senses that their time is running out. He tries to encourage Yong-il, shouting at him to focus, but nothing helps. They are doomed, and then a miracle. The number 1 player grabs the rope. A sharp tug wakes up their comrade, and he finally spins the top perfectly, at the very last moment. Now it's up to Gi Hun. He has to hit the shuttlecock 5 times in a row without dropping it. 4 of his hits are perfect. On the 5th, he miscalculates. The shuttlecock is about to fall. At the last moment, Gi Hun's leg lifts. He manages to knock the shuttlecock away. They run to the finish line, crossing the line with a split second left. Gi Hun was twice on the verge of defeat, but he didn't even realize who saved him this time. Gi Hun then realized that it was no longer a matter of survival, but of stopping the Squid Game once and for all. He and his allies were preparing a rebellion. His plan was to wait for the right moment, and then strike hard. They strategized while they waited, and then the rebellion began. The players captured the soldiers, breaking into the control room. For the first time in history, the Squid Game was out of control, but then Yong-il's voice came over the radio telling him that it was over. Before Gi Hun can process what he's hearing, a gunshot rings out. It seems that Yong-il has been killed in the chaos, and Gi Hun has lost his most trusted ally, but the truth is far worse. It turns out that it was all a lie. Yeon-il faked his death. He never intended to ruin the game. He was working for them all along. The host orders the guards to act, which they do immediately. The uprising is crushed in minutes. Gi Hun is grabbed and has a gun pointed at his head. And then the host appears. Gi Hun is silent. Anger overcomes him, but he can do nothing. The plan has failed because the uprising is suppressed. And then the worst thing happens. The host raises his gun, points it straight at Gi Hun's head, but at the last moment turns the gun and eliminates his best friend. Gi Hun screams, rushes forward. It seems to him that he should have died, but the host leaves him alive to make him suffer. The game continues, but Gi Hun is broken. What do you think will be the ending for the main character? Write your opinion in the comments.